Imagine the world ending in rain. The ground disappears. A family climbs into a boat. Animals follow. When the water finally falls away, a bird is sent out to search for land. That sounds like one famous story. But versions of this pattern appear in ancient Mesopotamia, the Hebrew Bible, Greek tradition, and many other cultures. The strange part is not that these stories resemble each other, it is that each one asks a different question: what must be saved when the world has failed? The earliest written flood stories we can trace come from Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. That matters. Rivers made farming and cities possible there, but seasonal flooding could also be terrifying. In the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh, the survivor Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that the gods decided to send a flood. The god Ea secretly warns him to build a boat, save his household, and bring living creatures aboard. After the storm, birds are released to test whether the water is receding. This is not a footnote to a later story. It is its own ancient literary tradition, preserved on clay tablets. The British Museum's flood tablet is a 7th century BCE copy of Tablet 11, and the tradition itself is older than that copy. It is tempting to treat every flood story as evidence that one enormous flood happened everywhere. The evidence does not let us say that. Stories can travel. Places with dangerous rivers and coasts can produce similar fears. And people can borrow an old narrative shape, then make it speak to their own world. Similarity is a clue for comparison, not a shortcut to a single historical event. Mesopotamian stories themselves changed over time. In the Atrahasis tradition, the gods send disasters after becoming disturbed by human noise. A god warns one man to build a boat. The details reveal a society thinking about order, population, divine power, and survival, not merely recording rainfall. In Genesis, the flood is framed as a moral crisis. Violence and corruption lead to destruction, while Noah is commanded to preserve life. In the Mesopotamian versions, the reasons and gods differ. That difference is not a problem to explain away. It is the point. A flood myth is a pressure test. It asks, when an old order collapses, who deserves a future, a family, animals, knowledge, a promise between the divine and human world? That is why the boat matters. It is not just transport. It is a tiny, fragile model of a world that might continue. Greek tradition gives us Deucalion and Pyrrha. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, Jupiter sends a flood, and the surviving pair eventually repopulate the earth in a strange, symbolic way. They throw the bones of their mother behind them, stones from Mother Earth, which become people. The story is not only about escape, it imagines humanity being remade from the landscape itself. Survival becomes transformation. Fire destroys by consuming. Water is different. It erases borders. It makes roads, homes, graves, and kingdoms vanish under one flat surface. For a farming society beside a river, water can be a gift in one season and a threat in the next. So flood myths are rarely only about fear. They are about the unbearable possibility that the systems people depend on, weather, rulers, moral rules, even the ground itself, can stop feeling stable. That is why these stories keep returning in new forms. Not because every culture told the same tale word for word, but because disaster forces the same human question. After loss, what do we choose to carry forward? Today we tell disaster stories through climate reports, evacuation maps, post-apocalyptic films, and emergency alerts. They are not ancient myths, but they often perform a related emotional task. They help us imagine collapse before it happens, and ask whether we would protect each other when it does. The ancient flood stories do not give us one clean answer. They leave us with boats built for different worlds. One preserves a family, another preserves a moral order, another imagines humanity beginning again from stone. Maybe that is why the stories endure. They do not simply say, the world ended. They ask, what is worth saving when it does? If you want another story that changed as it traveled through time, watch next. Medusa was never just a monster.